Welcome to the program. In this edition, is population growth in urban areas a good or a bad thing?
I believe that we can use urbanization as a tool for modernization.
The urban areas are an instrument of reducing the number of population in the rural areas, bring them to the town so that the rural areas are used for more organized production.
Well, in the past, governments and policymakers used to tell people to move from urban areas to rural areas. Urbanization was viewed negatively. It was seen as a threat to development. But that notion is changing pretty fast.
The problem is that in the last 20 years, urbanization is going in a bad direction. We are not on a good track.
We are not just talking about urbanization, but sustainable urbanization. And with special focus on Africa, we will tell you what African leaders are doing in order to tap into the benefits of population growth and what measures they are putting in place in order to make cities engines of economic growth.
Unemployment and underemployment must be tackled.
Plus, the role of the African Union and the United Nations Organization on Human Settlements, the UN Habitat. But first, here is our fact sheet.
The continent's population is estimated at 1.2 billion people and is expected to triple in the next 50 years. Urban population increased from 15% of the total population in 1960 to 40% in 2010. It is projected that in 2050, the continent's urban population will reach 60%.
Ghana is a fast urbanizing country. At independence, it was estimated that about 70% of our people lived in the rural areas. Today, as we speak, nearly 57% of our people live in urban areas and 43% live in rural areas.
Trends in Kenya match the global pattern of rapid urban expansion. A third of our population, about 40 million, now live in cities and towns. And daily, thousands more join.
There you are. Cities are becoming more and more crowded. And according to the UN, in less than 20 years, the majority of African citizens will be living in urban areas. But are African governments ready to ensure that cities are livable? Is there adequate, decent, and affordable housing? Is sanitation taken care of? Are there enough hospitals and schools? How about energy? Are there jobs or other means of income? And are there enough public spaces for recreation? Those are some of the socio-economic necessities analysts say should be addressed. Even as leaders continue to give attention to cities as engines for economic growth.
I believe that we can use urbanization as a tool for modernization. One, in terms of the fact that it creates concentrated markets for development of agriculture. Aside from that, the movement of people into urban centers stimulates economic activity.
And urbanization, in fact, is not only a form of development, it could be made a sustainable form of development for the people and the citizens of any country who are involved in this process.
The African Union is at the center of the new thinking that aims to raise the profile of urbanization as a force for Africa's development, as spelled out in what is known as Agenda 2063, a long-term regional agenda to achieve development in 5 decades with the support of the United Nations Agency for Human Settlements, the UN Habitat.
First, urbanization which is taking place on the continent has to be coordinated. We have to ensure that there is infrastructure to be able to cope, that people have got sustainable housing. And of course, we also need to ensure that there are jobs, because there's no point people being urbanized, leaving the rural areas to go to the cities only to find that they can't work.
We are calling all the stakeholders, including academia, civil society stakeholders, to mobilize in a profound conversation about urbanization. Without it, we are not going to produce the kind of change that is needed in urbanization to make it prosperous and equitable and safe, the main aspirations of today's population in the world.
And Africa is not alone in that agenda to tap into the benefits of urbanization. The world is talking about it. And a quick reminder here, during the recent United Nations Conference on Housing and Sustainable Urban Development, or Habitat 3, that took place in Quito, Ecuador in October 2016, a new framework that lays out how cities should be planned and managed to best promote sustainable urbanization was adopted. The framework is known as the New Urban Agenda. The Quito Conference brought together mayors, local and regional authorities, civil society and community groups, the private sector, and urban planners.
I call upon all of you to take forward this expressed commitment and in so doing contribute to the success of Habitat 3 outcome in Quito.
From Quito back to Africa, and step by step, let us now sample the various initiatives African leaders are promoting in order to enhance sustainable urban development. In Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama's administration has placed emphasis on decongesting the country's capital city, Accra, in order to ease traffic flow and movement of people. The government is now removing roundabouts and replacing them with interchanges, with the main one being the Kwame Nkrumah Circle.
It makes people able to commute faster within the city, which is a good thing. And two, it reduces the level of frustration just sitting in traffic for so many hours just to move from one side of the city to the other. And then three, it saves people money in not burning so much fuel sitting in traffic. And aside from that, the general area of the Kwame Nkrumah interchange is a commercial area, very commercial area. There are banks, the main vehicle station that takes people between the two major cities in Ghana, that is Accra and Kumasi, is located at the Kwame Nkrumah interchange. And so it's an area of general economic activity. And so putting the interchange there and allowing people to move freely in that area, I'm sure would stimulate the economy of Accra as the capital city.
Another milestone in Ghana is in the area of urban renewal and putting in place policies to enhance affordable housing for low-income earners and the urban poor.
We've been trying to reach them with social services by opening up the roads in those areas. We've tarred some of the roads in those areas, and we're also making sure that there's proper water supply, and then we're improving sanitation within those areas. And Habitat has been a very strong partner in terms of sharing best practices and experiences with us.
Still in West Africa, we shift focus to Liberia. The country may still be reeling from the impact of the past political instability, but President Ellen Sirleaf Johnson is optimistic that the country's urban agenda will bear fruit, with the capital city, Monrovia, becoming an important economic hub.
Liberia's population is relatively small, 3.8 million. And with our vast resources, mineral, agriculture, marine, oil, the potential for becoming one of the fastest growing economies is there, and I think that's already been recognized.
Like any other country, Liberia's urban road network is an important driver of the economy the government is investing in.
We have such potential for diversity that Liberia's economy should grow very rapidly within the next decade.
Seychelles, on the other hand, has embarked on an economic transformation program in collaboration with development partners like the World Bank to empower urban dwellers with skills that can enable them participate in wealth creation, apart from providing them with the necessary social amenities.
Today, the Seychellois have skills, enough skills to understand what is good for them, skills to be able to participate in the economic development. And this has been our forte because we have a well-educated people, we have invested in people, they have proper housing, and now they understand where they are, where they have been, where they are, and where they should be aiming to go in the future.
More important for Seychelles is investment that can be banked on for the future.
We have continued to encourage foreign direct investment. A lot of companies, a lot of people have invested in Seychelles, and this has provided the economic force to be able to generate enough economic activity. And at the same time, enable our people to be able to participate in it.
We take a short break. When we return, more on what African leaders are doing in order to tap into the benefits of population growth in urban areas.
Africa's moment has come.
Urbanization is naturally taking place.
Welcome back. We are discussing why population growth in urban areas is an important tool for development and how cities can be turned into engines of economic growth. Time now to continue with what African leaders are doing in order to tap into that potential. For South Africa, President Jacob Zuma's administration is putting emphasis on innovation in the energy sector.
We have said, let us produce energy from solar, we continue with the coal, but also increasing the wind, using the wind, but using also the hydro. So the combination of these was not there before. In the process, they employ people, but also we raise the volume of energy.
Besides energy, South Africa is citing skills development as her other key focus in its quest for sustainable urbanization.
We are, for example, training our people, skilling them for the purposes of industrialization.
In Uganda, the government's focus is on improving the road network to link rural areas with urban areas.
We have worked on the roads, the trunk roads linking the towns. We have worked a little bit on the urban roads, not as much as we would like to do. The housing is mainly done by the private sector as of now, because we have been concentrating on electricity and the road.
The construction of the standard gauge railway in Kenya, on the other hand, is expected to spur the growth of economic zones. The mega project is expected to boost job creation besides easing movement of people and goods, especially between urban centers.
We want our people to attain a high standard of living underpinned by a well-developed, competitive industrial economy. Presently, our region relies almost exclusively on road transport, whose maintenance costs is not only high, but unsustainable.
In the housing sector, President Uhuru Kenyatta says the Kenyan government has approved housing sector and real estate market incentives that attract the participation of the private sector in the housing delivery process, particularly for low-income earners.
My government, with its strong focus on delivering improved lives for the urban poor, will give robust support to the Kenya Slum Upgrading Program. This program aims at improving the lives of an estimated 5.4 million people living and working in our slums and informal settlements.
Rwanda's urban areas, including the city of Kigali, are also undergoing a noticeable facelift. President Paul Kagame says private-public partnership is key to this growth, and the road network has improved too.
If we have entrenched decentralization and decision-making in which citizens participate, they have been able to determine what happens during this movement from rural to urban areas, and it has been very effective to make sure that the planning happens in a proper way and that citizens are educated on the challenge involved but also the benefits.
We cross over to Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation. Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo says the government of Nigeria is implementing policies aimed at enhancing access to decent and affordable housing in urban areas, with this being articulated as a socio-economic right.
We have a mortgage finance scheme that's already been launched, and we're also going to, in another couple of months, we're also going to launch our social housing scheme, which looks at housing which will be affordable within a certain bracket. We think that all of this will conduce to job creation, will create several jobs. It will meet our human dignity thresholds, which is one of the very important things for us.
Besides the presidential initiatives, the role of development partners like the African Development Bank cannot be ignored.
We are investing quite a lot in energy because, you can't have urbanization without electricity. And that's why we launched a program called the New Deal on Energy for Africa to provide universal access to electricity in Africa by 2025. Secondly is that we are supporting a lot of infrastructure in water, in sanitation, very, very important in urban areas. The bank also, as you know, supports the development of low-cost housing in many urban areas.
In a nutshell, economic growth cannot occur without urbanization, but urbanization alone is not sufficient to generate economic growth. Urbanization that occurs in unsustainable patterns can actually constrain economic growth.
Well, Africa today is trying to get its rightful place in the world, is trying to make sure that it's in charge of its destiny. Africa tomorrow will be the one that will be the shining star because, like I said, we are the ones that still have our natural assets and resources largely intact. We're the ones that will represent the potential for increase in global trade and investment. And so Africa's moment has come.
Urbanization is naturally taking place.
Working with Habitat, if we can strengthen the capacity of our town planning departments to be able to anticipate what population movements are going to be in the future and be able to put in place the appropriate planning tools to meet that, I think that would be a useful thing.
The problem is that in the last 20 years, urbanization is going in a bad direction. We are not on a good track. We are going in a bad track in terms that, of course, in between we have had the 2008 financial crisis that, as you know, it was related with urbanization at the beginning, and it has impacted urbanization in quite a big, important manner.
Before we wind up, here is a recap of some of the benefits of sustainable urbanization. It is a vehicle for Africa's economic and social transformation. It can accelerate regional integration in Africa. It can also accelerate job creation and eradication of poverty. Sustainable urbanization can also contribute to adaptation or mitigation against climate change. That brings us to the end of the show. We looked into why population growth in urban areas is an important tool for development, how cities can be turned into engines of economic growth, and what African leaders in particular are doing in order to tap into that potential. Remember, you can watch this edition on our online platforms. On behalf of the crew, thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye for now.